Hi, Juanita.
Hi, Keisha. How's it going?
Pretty good. It's a beautiful Sunday here in Connecticut.
No kidding. It's like almost 90 degrees here in Michigan. I don't know what happened, but we went from kind of winter to full summer in 24 hours. That's
Hopefully,
normal
we don't
here.
go back to winter. I'm over winter. I'm ready for spring.
Yeah.
So, we are PathGab. What's PathGab? PathGab is where pathology and the lab meets life. It's not just for patients, it's for people. And pathology, we want to share with you that pathology exists to help us thrive and not simply to recover.
So, speaking of that, today we wanted to talk about women in pathology.
So, it's interesting. Um, Clearly, we are both women, although I say clearly, but it may not be so clear all the time. And our experiences are going to be shaped by not only the fact that we're women in pathology, but Black women in pathology. So our experiences are not necessarily your experiences. Our perspectives are not yours. They are our own and do not belong to any of the institutions from which we come or belong to.
Right. But I think like when we think about being a woman in pathology, a lot of things can come to mind. The first thing that comes to my mind is, how hard was the road to get here? In the past, medicine was heavily male dominated, and I think we've both came up through a time period in which that started to change. So like dealing with that shift in approach. And then of course there's other dimensions to being a woman I think that exist. Obviously, we have the ability, or anyone who has a uterus essentially has the ability to have a baby, and our prime birthing years happen during training and during attending hood. So, how do you have a thriving career when you may or may not be having children? So that's another one that comes up. And then just normal kind of parity issues that just live in the world no matter where you are practicing. If you're a physician or, a nurse, or I don't know, you just work at the local McDonald's, I think sometimes there's issues that exist because of gender differences.
So, my perspective on all of those and maybe my approach has changed over time. I remember somebody saying, and I don't know who said it, that you can have it all, but not at the same time,
Mm.
right? So these days, I think I'm okay with failing in one or more of these areas at any one time, when maybe a few years ago I wasn't. It would give me agita. And when I started in pathology, I don't know that young me thought there was so much of a gender gap with so many issues. I was attracted to pathology because there were strong women in pathology. There are two of the strongest women I've ever seen when I did started my residency training in Jamaica, the Williamses, right? They were bold, they were brash, they were fly, dressed like amazing, and just spectacular pathologists who were very well respected. And then I came to America and I did residency, and I don't know if I even saw it. I came to pathology because I loved it. And we can talk about the
Hmm.
lifestyle stuff in a little bit. It was only after, and I would consider myself a leader, after kind of trying to break into that leadership space, that you start to really recognize so many subtle things that are real and pervasive. I always knew the female med students and residents got a little harder time in some respects, and maybe that's a whole podcast of its own. So maybe we won't go into that, but you were gonna say something.
Yeah, no, I was going to say something similar. I think I like I said, we're coming up in a time period in which the gender demographics are highly changing. Now, I don't have the data right on top of my fingers, but I know my medical school was probably 50-50 male female. And I think those numbers are higher now. It might be more women are going into medicine than men at the current moment. We'd have to look up that ACGME data. And then in residency program, I think I saw a stat recently that said a little over 50% of women represent pathology residents. If we can find that graph, we'll show it to you guys. So we are seeing more women, and I did see more women during
Right.
to the world. So I think that's really interesting because you don't realize, like, go back a step, like you don't realize who the trailblazers were in your field. Like some of those people we saw mentoring us, being our like visible like signs of amazingness, they were trailblazers. They had it
Right.
probably kind of rough, like extra rough at the time.
And you don't think about that because it just seems normal. And then you realize that, wait a second, most of the cheers are men,
Right.
right? Like, so how is that possible? We are 50 or more percent of the workforce, but we are led mostly by men. We become interim chairs. We get ladder leadership positions. We do a lot of the basic work of running departments, running residency training programs. But somehow we don't ascend to that kind of pinnacle of leadership, right?
Yeah.
In the
Like I saw
same
that.
proportions.
Right. And I think I mentioned I saw this quote was like, where the women can steer that ship during a storm, but when it's time to have a captain, somebody else is always picked. And that's
Right,
just like kind of, I think it's just one of those subversive effects of just living in America. It just is what, in a way, it is what it is. Like without actively trying to counteract what is considered baseline, it doesn't change. It won't change on
right,
its own.
right. It's fascinating because I do feel like that's my career in a
Hmm.
sense.
How
Um,
so?
I think that even when you step outside of pathology, that women are called on to do the hard work when the hard work is necessary. Fix the problems, you know, see these goals, let's make sure we meet them. But when it comes time for the reward of a label, somehow it seems that inadvertently or intentionally, that does not go to women at the same proportion that the ask to do the hard work
Hmm.
goes to. So, and maybe we're all collectively letting that happen, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it just feels exhausting to always go, wait, why is this happening? It seems it, it's a pretty exhausting time in the world right now. So you kind of, I think women tend to then decide that, you know what, I'm going to focus on this other thing and that other thing. I don't want to keep hitting this barrier. I don't want to
Hmm.
keep trying to make this change. So I'm going to take my rewards from my children and from my hobbies and from, I'll still do the work, but it might be too hard and carries the illusion of this over ambitiousness that women get labeled with, but not men. It's perfectly reasonable. Some things are perfectly reasonable and reasonably expected. And that still happens, right? It's not going to inhibit your life, but it is a reality. That's what I think.
Yeah, I don't think it inhibits your life, but to some extent, hitting, I guess, that proverbial glass ceiling could lead to feelings of dissatisfaction, feelings of burnout, because, burnout is, in my opinion, like a combination of honestly too much work, right? But it's also either no recognition, no monetary benefit, the other things that go with doing too much work at a certain time, like so at least you could like say, well, yeah, I'm tired, but I guess, as chair of this department, like it comes with the territory or whatever. And I think
Right.
the other thing it makes me think about is I don't know what the right words are for this, but we're kind of ingrained to just pick up the slack and do the work. And it's not just at work. I mean, like I'm in a progressive relationship, but like, dude, I will go home and when the house is dirty, I feel bad. It's like I didn't take care of it. Even though I have a partner who's willing to do all that stuff too. I think we naturally take on some roles as caregivers, and that role extends to our jobs too. I mean,
Ye-
honestly, that's, why did I get into medicine? I wanted to take care of patients. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, it's a natural thing.
So that when you say it like that, that's so interesting. We don't let go. We don't want. We're not it's not ingrained in us to let it go or let it slide or
Hmm.
kind of push it down to the bottom of the pile. So you end up doing all of these things that, you know, yeah, and I tell myself I'm actively trying to just be like, well, that can wait, this can wait, but it's not, you're right. It's everywhere. It's not just at work, but we
Right.
bring that to work and have become so used to bringing it to work without the appropriate rewards that come with it. We take the personal reward as the reward, which is awesome, but sometimes when that's too much, that's when you burn out. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely. When you think about it, like we were talking about how both of us kind of maybe were a little oblivious to the fact that, you know, at least in leadership, pathology has been male dominated. There's a really interesting graph from an article, and we'll put that up on the screen for you right here as well. That shows, 50 years ago, there were almost no women in pathology. And now we're getting close to 50-50. But when you look at the leadership, like I said, we sat in our own bubbles where we were seeing some women leaders out there. So, like, what do you think how that's going to change things going forward as the younger pathologists, the new in practice coming up underneath us, see more women in these roles? Do you think it's going to naturally lead to more women in leadership roles?
I don't know because I think there are things that are happening in this generation that I perhaps didn't predict, but we're seeing. Like if you look at the statistics of even just people deciding to have children, and I
Mm-hmm.
do wonder if the effect is going to be that they just opt out of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I That would be my concern is that and not opt out in a disenfranchised or disenchanted way, but just choosing to pursue rewards in other ways that are a little bit simpler. I see that with just, and this is outside pathology, with just even the idea of remote work and work-life integration.
Mm-hmm.
That my sense is that this generation is opting for a better life and not necessarily a better work life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
eventually, as that bleeds into medicine, it may affect men and women similarly. And so who knows what that would mean. But I sometimes feel like this generation is rebelling against the things we took for granted. And part of this rebellion, like even like now I joke, the 40-hour work week is a scam, right? Why are we working 5 days and resting for two? And actually, in those 2 days of rest, there's one day that's really just chores, and then one day of rest if you're lucky. And so I think there is a generation of people that are approaching this kind of outlook. And unless we change what leadership looks like and feels like and delivers, then we are going to see more opting out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be fascinating to see how it evolves over time. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me think, like, I would love to see leadership become more of a shared thing as we all try to get to this, like as you just said, like work life integration. Um, I th- I joke with other younger pathologists and physicians, and like, hey, how many of you in this room are a leader? And a lot of people don't want to raise their hands, but I'm sorry, the fact that you went to medical school and became a doctor, I like, in the view in the view of all these other people, you are already a natural born leader. You've done a lot to take care of other people, and that's where you stand right now. So I do wonder, as we try to have better work life integration, people want to feel recognized for the things that they are doing, perhaps we won't be looking at leadership as like just the chair of the department or
Hmm.
the chief medical officer or whatever. And we might be looking more at the components and where people's strengths are and how they take a role in making certain aspects of work go great. I don't know. Like that would be really interesting to see. I would kind of love that, to be honest with you.
Well, so that's a model that the department that I grew up in or I came up in Jamaica, that model is a rotation model of leadership. Well, it
Mm,
used to be,
mhm,
right? And I don't know that the department has suffered for it. So that's an interesting concept. I have to check in with them again and see if it still is, but it nobody's a leader for life. It's you do your time and then you're done. And so
mhm,
if you clearly then have the same gender balance in terms of the pathologists, as we know generally happens, then by definition, when you rotate it, there will be some balance restored in leadership. I think that's particularly important because leaders drive strategy. And when you are led by any dominant group consistently, persistently, their strategy is often shaped by their experience. We bring to work ourselves. I
mhm,
tell people all the time, please don't bring your whole self. Please bring only your whole professional self as much as you can. But we bring that. And so we we then use that to determine so many different things in the laboratory, so
mhm,
many different things in pathology, and patients don't really recognize, where your dollars go, what we prioritize, how we choose things, the things we focus on are all of those are driven by our experiences. So
mhm,
where in medicine and in pathology you don't achieve some measure of parity or at least inclusivity, it's going to eventually affect the outcome, which is people and patient care. And people, not just patients, because not everybody that we touch is a patient. It's hard for us to
absolutely.
think about that as a
Yeah,
doctor, but just
absolutely.
still.
You know, the other thing that made me think of is, we're talking about perhaps there being a trend in the younger generations to have more of a sense of work life integration. And I've been seeing things in my own practice as well as in other people practices to try to like allow for that to happen. Um, there's more of a turn to part-time positions, both used by younger and those who are closer to retirement age. Uh, Also, in general, if you're if you're not dealing with a pathologist shortage, you know, our particular subspecialty has been considered one of those lifestyle subspecialties, like unless you're on call, like perhaps you can come in when you need to come in, like, and this would of course apply to both any kind of parent who's taking care of their kids, but like if you gotta drop someone off to school, you typically now have more of that flexibility. Like
Yeah.
I've seen how my coworkers over the years have changed their stance regarding like how much does someone need to be there at 8 o'clock? Like, why do you have to be here at 8 o'clock if you're not on Frozen's? You know what I mean? Like, so I've seen that change over the last 15 years or so. I don't know. What have you seen?
So I want to acknowledge that I've made that change, right? Like
Hmm.
it's absolutely over time become so much more important to me to respect flexibility, accountability and flexibility. So
Absolutely.
if you do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, I don't need to get into the minutia of are you here, are you there, are you know what? So I definitely know that I've evolved in that respect. So I hope that evolution continues across the board. And for me, I work very hard at that. I think it's fair to have an expectation of people, communicate that expectation to them, and then leave them room to deliver on that in a reasonable way that does not affect the outcome of the department. And my experience is that if you're dealing with reasonable adults, that's just fine. It's
Hmm.
absolutely just fine. Great thing about it that I've also noticed is that that involves men and women.
Mhm.
right? Because men have
Mhm.
to pick up kids too. You know what I mean? So, or take their pets to the vet, or like if you're child free, everybody has something
Mhm.
that they need to take care of that is not requiring that, or that it doesn't make sense to be physically there all the time, a strict 8 to 5, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So I agree with you, and I've also evolved in that position. And I think that kind of evolution is necessary not just for women in pathology, but for men in pathology too.
Right.
So
And I think that really leads to more, more attraction to the field to know
yeah,
that more people are seeing this as being like more flexible to your lifestyle. And, I was just going to bring up it's not just parents trying to take care of their kids.
right.
I mean, it's also like extended families. A lot of us are living in more blended units now, and so
Sandwich
you
generation.
got life outside of work
Yeah.
that you need to deal with. You
As
know
you
what I mean?
should. As
Right.
you
And
should,
sometimes I
right?
need to go to the doctor too. Like,
Yeah.
we got to take care of ourselves as well. So, like, absolutely, I've seen that as being very helpful to getting like you said, not just women, but everyone like into a place where they can have a better balance,
Right.
honestly.
Right. And be better doctors. So, you
Absolutely.
know, I,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think we don't have the answers. We're starting the conversation. This is one of our first conversations. There'll be more. There's so many different layers and aspects to this that we will get into, and can do for the future. But yeah, women in pathology, women in leadership, very a topic with many tentacles. So tell us what you think in the comments below. We don't have all the answers, but we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you next time we get together to gab.
We look forward to hearing from you. Please like and subscribe below.